This podcast is rated E for explicit. This is the end of our series exploring the topics of voyeurism and exhibitionism. So if you haven't heard the previous 2 episodes, start at the beginning with Looks of Lustful Means, followed by the Exhibitionist spell.
We all grown, and if you lived in the high rise, we all have sex, so you know what sex is. You know what I'm saying? You know the mechanics of it. So basically, you're watching it out of curiosity to see what they look like, in my opinion. So you gauge the equipment. Oh, she got a bad body. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. He looks good. He got a fat. And after you pretty much gauge that out, you done. Past that point, it's kind of like, okay, so not gonna lie, I might jack off to it. Anyway, go ahead.
You met me in the midst of many things. Shedding skin, sprout wings. Looking at life as a spiritual being through a human lens. Having conversations with God about so many things. This show is your invitation. The poet God is the conversation.
On our voyage exploring the subject of voyeurism with our episode Looks of Lustful Means, we stopped and couldn't help but dwell as we fell under the exhibitionist spell. It was in that previous episode where the differences of opinions were not subtle. So here we are in this episode with more of the rebuttal.
For example, people cruise in parks and all that type of stuff, right? You're in a public place. You meet up with somebody and someone else walks up and starts, doing whatever they do while watching you. If I tell you, like, hey, nah, we good, go somewhere else, the consent to watch has been declined. You should go away because now you're a voyeur. Look, we see people doing their thing all the time. Yet we find a way to mind our business. Some of us.
So I feel like the culture of the cruising group that he's talking about, that perhaps within that group there's not an expectation, right? Because they all know what they're there for, right? But if you're in the park and you're in a public space like that, no walls, none of that stuff, if you're just a regular person in that park, there is no expectation that you're private because you are in a space that doesn't have any barriers.
It's called public park.
But his perception is the act is private. So if I do the act, then it's your obligation to look away. But everybody is not of that mindset. They're thinking, well, if you wanted the act private, you would have chosen
A different location.
a
bedroom or something.
Exactly.
A hotel room or something.
Why does it have to be a bedroom?
Just
A closed vehicle.
A staircase. I'm dead.
find a public restroom with a door lock and do that, But then in his mind, if I come in to use the bathroom and I'm listening and I don't immediately walk out, then I'm invading his privacy. But in my mind, I'm thinking, what are you doing in the public bathroom?
Exactly.
Very warped thinking, I think.
Yeah, it could be warped, but I really think that is really built on a cultural expectation versus anything else, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're part of a cruising culture, and you may have these kind of rules that you all live by.
But it could also be to the people, the way the person who is coming, the appearance of the person. So it could be that I don't want you coming towards me, but if you look different, maybe I could allow you to watch or come in. So I think that plays a part too to the whole thing.
I think there's a certain limitation that the guy, the gentleman that was speaking, placed on other people, even though he is in a place or space where he is being free and he's living out in his fantasies and so on and so forth, yet he's placing limitations on others. That's kind of unfair.
Mm-hmm. Because if you out there and you living your life, I might want to live mine too. I mean, you look good.
Exactly.
Right.
But his expectation is like, yes, I'm doing something private out in public, but I expect you to have some kind of respect for me and not look. And he's going to find that a lot of people don't have that kind of respect.
Nope.
Not for themselves and not for you.
I love that. I love it.
Not going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I was thinking about this, Delon, about the hypocrisy of it all, right? And I do feel like there are plenty of us who think that we really are above our own desires, right? Where we think that we are more powerful than just that natural feeling of attraction or need for pleasure or whatever. And I don't think we are. I think that we can control maybe a little bit of how we react to certain things, but the feeling itself doesn't go away.
I think that's the only thing that would stop a person from looking. It's just the act of power that they get over, I'm not going to watch you. You know?
Right.
That's the only thing that maybe they're getting off on. Like, you don't attract me. I'm not even going to look at this. But I think that for the most part, most people would be willing to see, like, survival instinct to look at your surroundings and be aware of, like, what's going on. And if something's going on over there, you're going to, like, okay.
So moving beyond the sexual kind of connotations here, because I don't think that all voyeurism is sexual.
Correct.
When that whole backup on the freeway is happening because an accident is on the other side,
Yes.
that is, to me, another extreme example of what you're talking about. Is that you are looking at this thing with certain interest because it's in your environment. But you're interested in what's going on over there, right?
Yes.
You know, it's so interesting because I think we place a lot of emphasis on the people watching, and we don't necessarily place a lot of emphasis on the people putting on the show, which is also an act of voyeurism. So I wonder, you know, if we can get into the mindset of thinking, okay, I'm putting on a show for what purposes? It may be to spice up my sex life. It also may be that I want people to watch me because I love the attention component of it.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey guys, I'm Joseph, a member of the board, which is what Akil refers to as his community of friends and supporters.
We all have something valuable to give. And sometimes it's as simple as giving someone else a reason to live.
On behalf of all the board members, I want to thank you for listening to our podcast. Akil's success is our success, and we want you to be a part of the community we are building.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
Because you are the very foundation we must build it on.
It's not enough to tell people that they matter. We have to show them. Like my friends showed me.
So tell a friend, leave a review, and keep in touch. We want to hear from you because it all matters. Just as you do.
In our previous episode, our conversation about our friendships got a little bit lengthy. But in this episode, we're back to assess if those friendships were a little bit filthy.
You're saying this is a friendship, but the only person doing the work is you.
Yeah, some felt a little bit lonely. And if you're gonna tell me about my feelings, make sure you know me. When you're trying to tell me about my feelings, that's where I have to stop you, sweetie. And when it comes to my time, please don't be greedy.
What does it feel like, I guess, to have a friend that is not only needy, but possessive at the same time?
I don't get possessed, bitch.
Oh,
Well, guess what?
they'll test you to see how committed you are to your own boundaries.
And, once more, what is your friendship credit score?
Is it 400? Okay. You know, if it's under 6, we may need to do some things to help you improve your credit.
Listen to What's Your Friendship Credit Score? Season 3, Episode 7. And after you follow the Poet God podcast on your favorite podcasting app, a quick search of the Poet God on Twitter and Instagram will connect you to just what we have on tap. And if you're not that social, at thepoetgod.com, we got your back. Have you ever heard that DNA holds memory?
DNA holds memory. So, sometimes, they'll say twins will jump generations. I believe it's the same thing with vices and things that your DNA holds from your lineage before. DNA always holds memory. So if you have that memory in you and that memory gets released and unlocked, that's why sometimes we do things and we don't understand why we do it. Because that our DNA has memory, so we are playing out a role that our great uncle was. He was a voyeurist, or he was a whatever you want to call him, whatever word you want to use, and give whatever title you want to give that person. Mm-hmm. And then that DNA got unlocked on you because it was never checked, it was never corrected, it was never changed, it was never transformed into something different. So if that lineage of that DNA, if somebody in that DNA lineage doesn't change the pattern, that pattern will repeat generation after generation after generation. It may jump 2 or 3, but then that's why little Harry's out there killing people or something like that. Oh, he was raised so good, but little did we know King Henry VIII, you know what I'm saying, like stuff like that.
My one-on-one conversation with this member of the board changed focus to the role that DNA plays in who we are, what or who we desire, and in Jeffrey Dahmer's case, a desire to kill. This notorious serial killer was top of mind because of a recently released series that told the story of Dahmer's childhood, his relationships with his family, friends, and his victims. In my one-on-one conversation with this member of the board, I shared that I wasn't expecting those relationships as they were portrayed in the series to be so normal. I didn't expect to see any humanity in any of it because of the stories I had heard about Dahmer prior to watching the series. I didn't know about the guilt his father felt because he too had an inclination to kill that, as far as we know, he didn't act on. In a way, it seems like Dahmer was also a victim of himself, his desires, and if you believe that, his DNA. But let's be clear, we still have choices, and so this is where the opinions of the board weren't subtle. But first, more of my one-on-one followed by the rebuttal. So, is someone like Jeffrey Dahmer worthy of compassion?
Well, here's what I say to that, and I think this is where the higher levels of spirituality come in, and people who really don't understand the levels of spirituality and awareness, they'll just say, oh, you're stupid, you crazy, how could you say such things? But when you think about it, people be like, how could you have compassion for somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer or somebody like that? I'd be like, it's easy, because we can all be that. We all have it in us. His is just turned on. Why? Because you're a physical being, and you got animalistic natures in you. You can kill somebody just as easy as Jeffrey Dahmer. You don't know. It's in you. You might. That's what happens. That's why people be like, oh, how did little Johnny? Because Johnny always had it in him. We all do. We just never know what's going to trigger it. That's the thing. That's why you should have compassion towards everybody, because at any given time, you can be anything to anyone. Unless somebody in that lineage chooses to confront that and battle that particular will go on. It's no different. Like we judge people like him and say, oh, he's such a miserable person because blah, blah, blah. But it's no different than a lineage that has alcoholism, drug addiction. They're just different addictions. It's an addiction. Murder is an addiction. However you want to put it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying none of that, but I'm saying those are addictions. But most people don't have I would say it like, the knowledge to even come up with that conclusion, because think about it. Most people stop reading at the 7th grade level, 8th grade level, right? We go to high school, but most people don't open books and read other things. They're basing all of their understanding off of this little bit of knowledge that they've maintained and memorized and seen off of TV, but they don't even really come with their own conclusion of why these things are happening. They just jump on the bandwagon. What he is doing is no different than a lineage of alcoholism in somebody's family. It's always going to be blame game, or that's them. Never you. Yeah. It's always going to be them. And I mean, that's the whole, I think that's what all the great Jesus, Buddha, that's what they all came to tell us. Like, compassion, have compassion for your brother because your brother is you. He's got struggles. Just because your struggles are different, like my struggle, right? I dealt with insecurity and self-worth so much that it hindered and crippled my life. That's no different than somebody struggling like Jeffrey Dahmer struggling. It's the same struggle. It's just on a different scale. Like it's the same, it's a struggle. It's called a struggle. But his struggle's on that end, my struggle's on this end. But what's the defining word? Struggle. So when you can have compassion knowing that somebody's in a struggle because you're in yours and you're like, damn, I can't even get out mine.
When he spoke about, things passing through DNA, I agree with, because there's proof that trauma will pass from DNA, passed down in the family. You've experienced a highly traumatic event. You've survived something horrible. And when that happens, it causes, you to look at the circumstances that led you to that and how you survived out of it. And you pass that down to your family verbally or just through your actions and what they now become their actions. And then, that was all done under the state of like self-preservation. So I can understand how like some of that trauma does pass down through DNA and through your family. Sexual things, though, I don't know. I don't know what studies have confirmed on that. But I would say that there was a quote I heard in a TV show where the guy, Stanley Tucci, he said, anybody can be a murderer. Anybody. You just have to find the right person. Okay? But having said that, to continually go and murder people after people after people, that's something that's not
an acquired taste.
No, it's like there's a level of brain damage, and that's proven, that needs to happen for you to disregard the feelings of other people,
right,
in order to pursue your own wants. So I'll stop it at that. But I'll say that, yes.
I was just going to say that.
So, and yes, you can become a sociopath through your environment, but to be a psychopath, that's trauma, brain trauma. So you just can't say that, okay, your dad was a psychopath, you're going to be a psychopath too. No, but if we did the same things to him physically to cause the same reaction in your brain, possibly, but why would we want that?
I found that very difficult because I understand physical features, physical things that affect you, can be controlled by DNA. But as you were talking about, some of this is environmental. Some of it is passed down through the ages from the people in front of you, not necessarily through your genetics, though. Genetics is, to me, I wouldn't say very finite. I think it's relatively finite. There are certain things that are in our DNA, that are defined by our DNA. I don't know if there's going to be some psychological things there. I'm sure there's probably some. But to be a psychopath, as y'all mentioned, there's brain damage. I don't think you're passing brain damage down through the ages like that.
Right.
Brain damage and some level of trauma. I thought about when he said it, I automatically thought about my brain, this is the way my brain works, nature versus nurture. And I think about, okay, so if I take a child who has been abused and so on and so forth, and I put him in a loving, supportive environment, what changes would be made? So sometimes it's not necessarily, in the DNA. I also think about Carl Jung, and I'm showing my psychology side. I think about Carl Jung, and Carl Jung talks about the shadow. And we all have different shadows, which I think is what your boy was alluding to when he talked about we all have the capability of being a murderer. Yes, we do all have the capability of doing something and being a murderer. However, we have to include nurture in that particular argument and say that if we are placed in an environment that is more supportive, more nurturing, that we can too change.
Where genetics plays a part in that is that some people are more susceptible to the environment than others.
Absolutely right.
So that's where genetic plays a part in it. You can take me and put me into a situation where I should be thriving, but I'm not going to. But you can take the right person and put them into a situation where they have everything they need to thrive, and they are going to do that.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's also putting expectations on the family members now. So you're supposed to know what's happened from your generations come down, and then try to fix that issue in yourself so you don't repeat the pattern that he says that you're capable of from your generation. Because that's thinking is saying that you need to create a blockage or stoppage from something that you may not be aware of.
But some people are aware. I mean, they know. My parents are messed up. They're highly dysfunctional. I cut myself off of them for a reason, for that part, because if I continue to be around them, I'm going to perpetuate the cycle of abuse that they have been through, So some people can see enough to know that,
But that tells me something very different than the fact that it's in their DNA.
True, yes.
Exactly. Most of us grow up watching what our parents do. We make the decision
not
as
to be
we become adults to either do it or not to do it. That's just human nature.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we have to acknowledge that we have nurture for a reason. That's how humans survive. We pass down stuff verbally, behaviorally, but I do think that we also have the same type of thing that when we're talking about things like laws, right? We're passing those down to don't kill nobody, right? That's not going to be good, right? But I think that's how we survive by using not just what we're given as our raw DNA, our raw instincts, but shaping our environment based on what we actually do, right? And I can imagine what life would be like if we didn't have people passing down stuff from generation to generation. I can't imagine humans surviving as long as we have.
I agree.
I want to thank all the members of the board who participated in this series for your voice, your vulnerability, and your willingness to take this voyage with me. You resonate deeply, even though you share discreetly. And whatever window into your life you wish to share, it's never lost on me the gift you give us by being here. I hold you in this sacred space I share for the work we have done and the work we've just begun.
I'm Akil Johnson, the poet god. Thank you for listening.